Hello, in the previous video we discussed about the intent and the need felt by our founding fathers to draft the Indian Constitution. In this video we will discuss the historical background of Indian legal system, that is, how Britishers came to India, how they assumed the direct crown rule. Independence was achieved in 1947 and how the need was felt after the independence to have our own constitution. In 1600, Britishers came to India as traders under the name of East India Company. After the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, they started taking interest in the political matters of the country. Their imperialistic attitude became clear after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. They established their imperialism after the Battle of Buxar and annexation of Punjab. During the reign of Warren Hastings, Regulating Act was passed in 1773. For the first time, Governor of Bengal was made the Governor General. The first Governor General was Warren Hastings. Supreme Court was established under this act at Calcutta, with Chief Justice and 3 assistant judges. It was the first act of centralization in India. After the Regulating Act came the Pitt's India Act 1784. Under this act, Company transferred its power to the British Parliament. A special court was established to try the company officials for the offences committed by them in the India. A council was established with 3 members and Commander-in-Chief was one of them. After the Pitt's India Act of 1784 came the Government of India Act 1858. This was the result of Mutiny of 1857. British Parliament felt the need of better governance. Thus, they framed this Act. Under this Act, the British Parliament transferred its powers to the Crown. The Crown had its direct representative in India by the name of Secretary of State or the Viceroy. After this, Indian Council Act of 1861 and 1892 was enacted. Under the Indian Council Act of 1861, for the first time Indians were admitted to the Legislative Council. This act was amended by 1892. The objective of this act was to widen the basis and expand the functions of the Government of India, to give further opportunities than at present existed to the non-official and native elements in Indian society, to take part in the work of the government and in that way to lead official recognition to that remarkable development both in political interest and capacity, which had been visible among the higher classes of Indian society since the government was taken over by the Crown in 1858. After this, Indian National Congress was formed in 1885. It was need of the hour to have political strategies and to include Indian in the administration. The first non-official attempt to draft the Constitution was made in 1895. The authorship was given to Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Indian Council Act 1909 came under the leadership of Morley and Minto. This is the reason Indian Council Act 1909 is also known as Morley-Minto reforms, as Morley was the Secretary of the State and Minto was the Viceroy of country. This act increased the number of Indians in the Legislative Council, and for the first time, Indians were also included in the Executive Council. There was a communal representation in the country, as Minto was also known as the father of communal electorate. With this, Indian Council Act came to an end. After the Indian Council Act 1909 came the Government of India Act 1919. This act was also known as Montague-Chelmsford Reform. Under this act, there was relaxation of central control over the provinces. There was demarcation of central subjects from the provincial subjects. Provincial subjects were further divided into two, which were transferred and reserved. This act also introduced diarchy at the center, bicameralism, direct election, and Central Public Service Commission in 1926. In 1928, at All India Party Conference, a subcommittee was appointed. This subcommittee was appointed under the chairmanship of Motilal Nehru. Motilal Nehru drafted Nehru Report in 1928. The main features of this report was that dominion status should be given to all the domains. 19 fundamental rights were adopted, which included equal rights to women, adult suffrage, direct elections. This report rejected the separate electorate and demanded a joint electorate with reservation to be given to Muslims, and this report also recommended the strong government at centre and at province level. Lastly, in this video, we will discuss the Government of India Act 1935. After the Nehru Report 1928 came the White Paper in 1933. This paper proposed certain reforms for the country, but this was rejected as it was not in consonance with the will of the people. The result of which was Government of India Act 1935 was enacted. This act is very important because after the independence was achieved and before the Constitution came into force, this act was the basis of the governance in the country. This act had various important features. For example, it says that there should be all India Federation. There has to be a federal court. It talked about provincial autonomy, and lastly, diarchy at the center. This act is very important because in the absence of Constitution of India after the independence, the country was governed through this act. In this video, we discussed about various acts and the journey of how the Indian legal system came till Government of India Act 1935. In the next video, we will discuss how the Constituent Assembly came into existence, how the demand of Constituent Assembly was put forth and resulting into the drafting of Indian Constitution by the same Constituent Assembly.